Welcome to The Great Detectives of Old Time Radio, brought to you by the Pacific Coast Highway Mysteries by Daniel Wiseman. From Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham. If you have a comment, email it to me, box13@greatdetectives.net. Follow us on Twitter at Radio Detectives, and check us out on Instagram, instagram.com/greatdetectives. If you're enjoying the podcast, please follow us using your favorite podcast software. In a moment, we're going to get into this week's episode of yours truly, Johnny Dollar. The original air date will be January 13th, 1957, and the episode will be the Desalles matter. But first, a word about today's sponsor. Are you ready for a thrilling ride down the California coast? Daniel Wiseman's Pacific Coast Highway Mystery Series beckons. In Cinnamon Girl, the second gripping installment, join amateur detective Adam Zantz as he delves deep into the heart of Hollywood's dark secrets. Adam Zantz isn't your typical detective, a Lyft driver and failed songwriter. He's uniquely positioned to uncover the truth amidst the shadows of the music industry. With praise from critics and readers alike, the first book, The Last Songbird, was hailed as a Sunday Times of London Best Mystery of 2023. Legendary author T. Jefferson Parker lauds it as rock noir at its best. Author Daniel Wiseman brings his insider knowledge to the stories as a former pop critic whose work has appeared in the LA Times and Billboard. The series is also influenced by his lifelong love of old-time radio programs like The Saint and Dragnet. Don't miss out on the Pacific Coast Highway Mystery Series, available now on Amazon and wherever books are sold. Embark on a journey into the heart of Hollywood's darkest mysteries with Adam Zantz. But now it's time for yours truly, Johnny Dollar, and the Desalles matter.
From Hollywood, it's time now for
Johnny Dollar.
Hillary Fuchs, Johnny. How's your time these days?
Time to live, time to die, you know. What's up?
A claim on a $100,000 policy. I want it investigated.
100,000? What kind of policy?
Straight life.
You sound worried.
I am. I think we're going to be taken this time, Johnny.
Bob Bailey in the exciting adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to Continental Insurance and Trust Company, 657 North Spear Boulevard, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is an account of expenses incurred during my investigation of the Desalles matter. I'd heard of Dave Desalles. I guess everybody in this country's heard of him at one time or another. Desalles Television, Desalles Radio, Desalles Electronics, Desalles Appliances, racetracks, theaters, Desalles this and that. But up until the time I talked to Hillary Fuchs about the case, I had never put a man behind the name. Expense account item 1, $2, 2 drinks for Hillary Fuchs and myself. We had them in his office out of my bottle over his desk.
Just plain worn out with it. Stuck.
Ooh, that's some water.
Oh. But I'll tell you this. I'm not going to make a present of $100,000 of stockholders' money to anybody.
I wouldn't do that either. Drink your drink.
Here's to war.
Salute. Now, while that's settling, maybe you'll settle down and tell me what it's all about.
Dave Desalles. Know him?
I've heard the name, yeah.
Well, he's dead. Drowned 4 days ago out on the coast.
So?
Did you ever see our K policy series?
I've heard of it.
Well, the premium's about triple a normal life policy. It's designed only for people with big money.
Sure.
But it's got a feature that makes those people with money look at it a long time.
Uh-huh.
This clause isn't anything more or less than the old accident clause paying double indemnity. Broken down, we aren't taking much of a chance. The incident statistics are with us.
All right, I'll look it up if I need it.
Okay. 3 months ago, we insured Dave Desalles on one of those K policies. 4 days ago, he fell off the back of a yacht and drowned, and we're hooked for $100,000.
Well, accidents happen.
You betcha, all the time. But I'm not sure it was an accident. At least there's not enough proof in this coroner's report to convince me.
You say it happened 4 days ago?
Yes?
Has a claim been filed yet?
Yes, and the beneficiary is the deceased's widow.
Inquest?
Inquest, burial, everything.
Was there an autopsy?
No, there was not.
Investigation?
Yes, it was handled by the local police in San Ladillo.
San what? Oh.
San Ladillo, a little place about 30 miles south of Los Angeles.
4 days ago. Why didn't you put someone on it then?
I did. Bert Kenyon. Here's his last report.
No evidence available to dispute coroner's verdict of accidental drowning. Recommend claim be honored. Kenyon. Sounds like cold turkey to me.
It may sound that way to you, but I still don't like it. I want it warmed up.
Now, look, Bert Kenyon knows his way around.
And he can miss like anyone else. I want you to go out there and work with him. Cover it all again. Get at Desalles' widow. She stands to gain most by his death. Maybe the two of you can come up with something.
Well, what do you do about the claim?
Deny liability on the grounds that the accident is not proven.
Hillary, you will be sued.
I'll take that chance.
Fuchs was an old chance taker who had been raised in the insurance business. The kind of man who gave a claim every kind of test, and if it still passed, he sat down and smelled the paper it was written on. And if he didn't like that, he'd take his chance. Expense account item 2, $138, plane fare to Los Angeles. Item 3, $3. A telegram to Bert Kenyon advising him of my arrival, which turned out to be at 1 o'clock in the morning, 10 minutes ahead of a fog that blanked out the whole area at the airport.
Johnny Dollar.
What? Oh, hey, Bert. How are you?
Johnny, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Come on, I got a car.
Well, have you got a cigarette? I ran out 2 hours ago.
Sure, man. Here you go. Good to see you. Good to see you, boy.
The last time I saw Bert Kenyon was July, a year ago, in Dayton, Ohio. He was there working on an arson claim for the National Underwriters. Before that, I'd run into him in Denver, Portland, and Chicago. And we'd worked together for 2 weeks in New Orleans on the San Antonio case. He sent me a Christmas card every year. I sent him one. We were as close and as far apart as two friends can be. When I saw him this time, he looked tired and thinner. And he lit one cigarette after the other.
You'll like San Ladillo, Johnny.
Yeah? How's the hotel?
Oh, old Spanish job. Big rooms, fireplaces, smells kind of damp all the time. You get used to it. Are you tired?
Yeah. Well, tell me about the claim, Bert.
Nothing to tell. Routine so far.
Oh, Fuchs was pretty worried about it. He doesn't like the coroner's report.
You know, Fuchs, worry. That's what he gets paid for.
Oh, that's what we get paid for, too.
Okay. On the face of it, I'd question the claim right away. Just on the 3 months period alone, I'd question it.
You still think it was an accident?
I think we should pay up and shut up. I'd like to have met this Desalles guy, Johnny. Stocks and bonds and pretty blondes. He sure had 'em all. Wait till you meet Mrs. Desalles. Wait till you see the layup. Boy. And Fuchs worrying about a $100,000 claim. Do you know how much Desalles' widow is worth? $8 million. $100,000 means about that much to her. Not that much. Peanuts. You want to hear something funny? Real funny?
Go on.
Desalles bought that policy one day at the racetrack at Del Mar. Yeah, because an insurance broker gave him a tip on a horse. Yeah. I can just see Fuchs worrying about his $100,000 and finding out about that part.
How did you find out about it?
Mrs. Desalles, she told me the story.
What about her?
Now, what about her?
She's the beneficiary.
Well, I told you, $100,000 doesn't mean a thing to her. Why would she kill him for $100,000?
Why not?
Fuchs sent you out here to take over because he thinks I lost stuff, didn't he, Johnny?
He sent me out to see if I could give you a hand. He wants us to cover the whole thing again.
Wouldn't kid an old pal, would you?
I'd never try, Bert.
I bet you wouldn't. I just bet you wouldn't.
In another 10 minutes, we were in San Ladillo, a sprawling little town built around a natural harbor. The houses looked expensive, the boats even more expensive. Kenyon pointed out one house on a hill, a 3-story affair with an acre or so of lawns around it. He explained it was the Desalles home. I checked into the San Ladillo Hotel and got a good night's sleep. Next morning, Bert Kenyon and I went over to the statements of everyone who had been on the yacht the night Desalles went overboard. Then we went out and interviewed everybody again, including Mrs. Desalles.
It's getting awfully dull.
You understand we have to do this.
All right. Dave and I were having drinks with a few friends. He said he felt like getting a little air. He went up on deck. A few minutes later, someone was looking for him.
Mr. Burke.
It might have been.
Well, that's what's on your statement.
All right. Mr. Burke. We couldn't find Dave, and then I remembered he was on deck. We went up there and saw his hat floating on the water. We looked around. We didn't see him. I sent one of the crew to call for help. They fished him out an hour or so later.
You were never on deck until then?
No, I wasn't.
Who were they? You said they fished him out.
Police. Someone. I don't know. We're a lot of men. They tried to give him artificial respiration.
Well, what did you do?
I watched. What else was there to do?
Hard thing to watch, Mrs. Desalles. Your husband just drowned.
Yes. Yes, it was. Is that all?
Yeah. That's all. Come in.
Hi. What's all this? Thought you'd be in bed.
Just going over the reports again.
Well, what do you think?
Oh, I don't know. I'm trying to make up my mind, Bert. About Mrs. Desalles. The way she looks, the way she acts.
I told you she was something.
Yeah, sure. 50 men would sell their souls to be tied up with her one way or another. She had help, Bert.
What?
She had to have help to kill him. A dozen people swear she was below drinking martinis with him, so someone was up on deck waiting for Desalles.
What have you got to go on?
Desalles swam the English Channel 20 years ago. He should have been able to swim 20 feet to a gangplank. Drunk or sober, he should have been able to do that.
I knew about that swimming business. Expert swimmers drown all the time. We both know that. What else?
Well, why didn't somebody hear him yell?
Maybe he didn't.
Everybody lets out a yell in a situation like that, falling or in the water. There were a dozen people aboard. One of them should have heard him yell.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
All right, suppose he didn't yell. But suppose this coroner made a mistake about the bruises on the side of his head. Suppose they happened before he went over the side.
It'd be hard to prove now, Johnny.
Oh, look, she's got a boyfriend somewhere, Bert. She had to have one. The servants can be gone over. Somebody at the house has seen him. He's called her, sent her messages. He's our boy. We can bring him out in the open. We'll get help from Los Angeles. We'll call the legal department and get them busy. Get permission to exhume the body and have an autopsy. We'll bring... What?
Let this one go, huh?
What?
Drop it. It's just lousy enough to get by, Fuchs.
We got a good case, Bert.
I know. I've known it all along, Johnny.
A sellout?
Mrs. Desalles offered me the whole 100,000. The whole 100,000, Johnny, to let it get by.
Who helped her do it?
I don't know. I wasn't interested anymore when she came up with the offer. Look, what does Desalles mean to you and me? Nothing. He had a whole life, the best it could give him. We can't bring him back. I'll split the 100,000 with you, Johnny. We'd have a little chance for some things, too. Johnny?
Bert.
No deal?
No deal.
You're a good dick, Johnny. Stand up.
Oh, put that thing away.
I've been looking a long time for a mark like this. Now you've lost it up, and I have to beat it. Turn around.
Bert.
So long, Johnny.
I went down to my knees trying to hold onto the desk. I saw him stand there a minute, like he might want to help me. And then he was gone. I did everything I could to make my feet, but my legs wouldn't work. And then it was all over.
Act two of yours truly, Johnny Dollar, in just a moment.
Democracy. What does it mean? The word itself is of Greek origin. Demos meaning the people, and kratos meaning authority. Thus, in a democracy, the people have the authority to rule themselves. But where does the authority come from? The authority comes from the people themselves. They put it in their Constitution, and the Constitution can't be changed by anyone except the people. That puts the supreme power of the government of a democratic country right in the hands of the people, and the people elect their representatives to run the government. In that manner, democracy gives everyone equal representation in the government. Democracy provides mankind with its greatest legacy of freedom.
Now, Act Two of yours truly, Johnny Dollar, and the Desalles matter.
The light on the desk was the first thing I saw. It was still on. The window was still open. The room was the way it had been before. I kept thinking about every man having a price and how Britt Kenyon had settled for $100,000. It seemed like a fair price. It also seemed too bad there was no way for him to collect it. There were two of them, a heavy-set man about 50 years old and a tall, lean-faced man with dark eyes. They looked me over.
Your name, Dollar?
Yeah.
Police. We want to talk to you. My name's Blair. This is Sergeant LaFrida. You sick or something?
I bumped my head.
How?
Never mind. Well, what do you want?
We'll ask the questions. What are you doing in San Ladillo?
I'm standing around in a hotel room talking to a couple of cops.
Just answer up.
Don't be funny, fella.
I don't feel even a little bit funny.
You got a license to carry this gun?
Hey, what is this?
Have you?
Yes. Your meat-handed friend ought to put it down or it might go off.
Been fired, Tom?
Meat-handed, huh?
That's what I said.
I'll remember that.
Okay. Tell us about it. Tell us what you're doing here. And don't waste a lot of time doing it.
I'm an insurance investigator. Tell this goon to back away and undouble his fist or I'll break a chair over his head.
Are you going to try to be tough, baby?
I'm going to try to find out what this is all about.
You want me to pop him open to see if he's as tough as he sounds?
Behave yourself, Tom. Let's see something that says you're an insurance dick.
Top of the dresser.
Bring it over, Tom.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Now tell us what you're doing in town.
The Desalles case. Now you tell me
You know
what
Bert Kenyon?
I know him. I've been working with him.
Well, he's been around town 4 or 5 days. We haven't seen you.
I only got here this morning.
You could prove all that, could you?
Oh, sure. With a plane ticket, with a hotel clerk downstairs, with a bellhop who brought up my luggage, with a dozen people or more I've talked to today.
And tonight? What about tonight?
Right here.
You could prove that, too?
Try the clerk downstairs. Ask Kenyon.
Where is Kenyon?
I don't know.
You ought to know.
Why don't you sit down, Tom?
Okay.
Now, when did you see Kenyon last?
A couple of hours ago.
Now, tell us what you talked about, and don't forget anything.
We talked about the Desalles case.
Kenyon have something new on it?
No.
Don't hold out on me, boy. This is police business. Tom here's pretty edgy for a cop, but I'll turn him loose on you if I have to because I haven't got a whole lot of time to waste being sweet.
Tom worries me to death.
One more minute. Just one more minute is all I'm going to take off this guy.
Oh, shut up. I'll ask you again, Dollar. What's new on the Desalles case? What did Kenyon tell you? The way we look at it, you came out here because something new popped up that might take 2 guys to handle it.
Look at it any way you want to.
Blair, you going to take this stuff?
Never mind. Okay. Get your hat and coat, Dollar. We're going to see a fella.
Not unless I know why. And I mean that.
Dollar, your buddy's been killed.
What?
Kenyon. Somebody shot him up an hour ago.
I put on my clothes and we went downstairs and climbed into a battered-looking police car. Tom LaFrida drove. I sat with Blair in the back seat. No one said anything. A half a mile out of San Ladillo, we turned onto the main highway and drove to a spot about 2 miles away, all-night filling station. There were a couple of highway patrol cars there, an ambulance, and men in dark suits who looked the way policemen always look.
Wait here. Keep an eye on him, Tom.
Sure.
Be just a minute.
He's a soft old gink.
I suppose you're hard.
I know how to handle pinballs like you. Before we're through, you and me, we'll have it out.
Okay, Dollar. Get out.
Yeah, sure.
Tom, put the spotlight on him.
Okay.
Good. Now, Posey. Posey, take a good look at this man. You ever seen him before?
No. Look good. Take your time, boy.
No, man I saw was shorter by this much. He wasn't as husky.
Okay. You go on back of your place there and get some sleep, boy.
That all?
There'll be more by morning. Go along now.
Sure. Night.
What was all that?
Tom, get out. You stick around here with Dick and Wally.
Okay. You're the boss.
You get in the front, Dollar. You're lucky Posey didn't recognize you.
I suppose I am. Why?
An hour ago, Posey's pumping gas. He hears 3 or 4 shots off in the dark. Then a car starts up and gets out of there real fast. Then Posey sees your pal Kenyon stagger out across the highway, full of lead. Kenyon drops dead right in front of the station. That's him they're mopping up now. We had half an idea you might have been the man beaten in the car.
That's a dumb idea.
Yeah, he was shot close up, like it was somebody we were just standing talking to, an old friend. You're an old friend of his.
Blair, you got it all wrong.
Huh?
We haven't been friends for 3 hours. His full name was George Blair. He'd been on the Los Angeles force 12 years. Then they retired him at half pay when a holdup man shot off part of his right foot. He'd taken the San Ladillo job because it was the only police force he could find that would take a man who limped more than a little. Expense account item 4, 20 cents coffee for Lieutenant Blair and myself.
I don't know. Maybe we went at you the wrong way in that hotel room. That's my fault. But a man's been murdered, and I get excited about things like that.
I don't blame you.
No hard feelings.
No. As long as I don't have to do business with your boy, Tom.
Yeah, I got Tom LaFrida and 3 other boys. None of them worth the press in their pants. I need help, darling.
What?
This town's popping open tonight. Your buddy got it. It's tied in with this Desalles thing somewhere. You're sure he didn't have anything new for you?
No.
You wouldn't want to tell me about that bump in your head, would you?
Not right now, no.
My boys are so green, they tromped all over the boat the night Desalles drowned. They loused up anything that might have helped me to find out how he went over the side. They banged his head against the dock a few times, bringing him in. I couldn't tell if the bruises were there before or after he was in the water.
You don't think Desalles was accidental?
I was murdered. She had somebody do it.
Well, why didn't any of that come out in the coroner's report?
My coroner runs a drugstore when he isn't being a coroner. If you feed him enough scotch, he'll tell you whether somebody's dead or not. He don't know from nothing. You know, the thing that kind of got me was this Kenyon. He went along with that coroner's report.
I know that.
We both know that. All right, I'll lay it on the line. I need help, Dollar. If I'm going to get anything done, find out who killed Kenyon, and get at this Desalles thing, I need help.
All right, I'll help you.
I was hoping you'd say that. More coffee?
No.
Dollar.
What?
You can start by telling me about that bruise in your head.
Kenyon.
He sold out, did he?
Yeah. To Mrs. Desalles. He covered up for her in the reports he sent in. A man back in Hartford got suspicious and sent me out to make a recheck.
Yeah, I guess something like that. No dummies, those claims men. Look, who'd he say was in on it?
He didn't say. I don't think he really knew. At least not any more than you and me.
No wonder you didn't want to talk up that kind of news. Kind of hurts, doesn't it? Like having a bad cop around.
You should know.
I know. Well, how do you feel?
Mister, I feel lousy. A friend of mine's been shot. What's more, he died a bum.
Well, I'm talking about dropping in on people while the smoke's still hanging around.
Mrs. Desalles?
Yeah.
Let's go. It was about 6:45 in the morning when we left the diner. By 7:30, we were winding up the driveway to the Desalles mansion overlooking the ocean. Blair mumbled things about the fog lifting and what a nice day it would be. I smoked cigarettes and looked and watched the contented smile he kept on his face.
Well, what do you know? Tommy LaFrida's car.
Oh, what does that mean?
Well, let's find out. Tom was off duty at 6 o'clock, as far as I know. I told you it was going to be a nice day.
Yeah, you did it then.
Nice place.
The only thing nicer is Buckingham Palace.
Mrs. Desalles picks up all these little knickknacks when we probate that will. The boat down there, everything. Nice.
Yes?
Mrs. Desalles, please.
At this hour of the morning. She's still asleep.
Yeah, we kind of guessed she might be in bed. You tell her the police are here and want to talk to her.
Police?
Now, you got it.
Yes, sir. Just a moment.
That's you, Blair?
Hello, Tom.
I'm waiting to see her, too. Thought she might have a little something to say that'd help in that Kenyon killing and be willing...
You remember Mr. Dollar?
Mister?
That's what I said, Tom.
What is this?
He's giving me a hand.
You trust him.
Better than I do you.
What kind of a crack is that?
No crack. Just that you're always talking when you ought to be listening. Besides that, you've been drinking again. Go on, get your hat and get out of here. I just gave you an order. Beat it.
Okay.
Oh, he'd like to kill somebody, that bird.
I'm not so sure he didn't. You got a gun in that coat?
No.
Take mine.
What?
I don't like him being here. It just came to me. He was the first one down at the dock the night Desalles got it. The first one.
Her boyfriend?
Could be.
I can't awaken Mrs. Desalles. You'll have to come later.
Well, we'll handle that part. Which room is hers?
But you can't come in here
Which
like this.
room?
Top of the stairs, the first door.
Well, you run along and buy yourself a cup of coffee. Come on, Dollar.
You can't go up there at this hour of the morning and break in on her.
Mrs. Desalles.
No.
Hey, get the light switch.
Yeah.
Come near me, please. Don't come near me, please. Please. Oh, please, I won't tell. I won't tell anyone.
Mrs. Desalles, I just... Beaten up.
Good Lord.
Please. Oh, please don't.
Look, Mrs. Desalles, we aren't going to hurt you. Tell us who did this to you. Tell us why. Tom LaFrida? Was it Tom? Tom helped you get rid of your husband, is that right? We know that's right. Now, what about Kenyon?
Tom killed him.
LaFrida killed him. Why?
He wanted money to get away. Tom said it'd be easier to kill him off than let him go.
Tom did this.
Why?
He said people would be around to see me. Not to talk about anything. Not to talk about anything.
This is George Blair. Get an ambulance over to the Desalles place, fast.
He said he loved me. He never loved anything in his life.
You big, fat pig. Turn around and get it.
I'll warn you, Tom. Dollar's got my gun.
He's next. You look at mine.
You all right?
Okay, his went in the ceiling. You?
Okay. He's gone. What made him, Dollar? What made him?
All these knickknacks. And her. Expense account item 5, $25. One phone call to Hartford. I told Hilary Fuchs the whole story, and he promised to send out the necessary legal aid. Item 6, $10. Flowers for Bert Kenyon. Item 7, $2. One drink. To one good cop with a bad foot. The drink cost $1. The glass cost $1. The drink for the good. The smashed glass for the bad. Oh, yeah, it was hammy, but it made me feel... Expense account total, $416. Remarks, none. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Now, here is our star to tell you about next week's story.
Next week, one of the sweetest old characters I ever met. And with him, one of the cleverest killers. Join us, won't you? Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, starring Bob Bailey, originates in Hollywood. It is written by John Dawson and is produced and directed by Jack Johnstone. Heard in our cast were Virginia Gregg, Harry Bartell, John Stephenson, Will Wright, James McCallion, and Ben Wright. Musical supervision is by Amerigo Marino. Be sure to join us next week, same time and station, for another exciting story of yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Dan Cumberly speaking.
Johnny Dollar has come to you through the worldwide facilities of the United States Armed Forces Radio and Television Service.
Welcome back. This was just a pure noir story of betrayal and corruption with a degree of grittiness that Edmund O'Brien would have absolutely loved to portray. It was very downbeat, and an interesting contrast coming a few weeks after the Rasmussen matter and from the same writer. This story feels very Chandler-esque, with a corrupted police department in a fictionalized town not far from Los Angeles, which is something that Chandler did in at least 2 of his novels that come to my mind. This is a story where I wish they would have found a way to give it more time. Even if you weren't doing a serial, they could have done a continued story, as they would do a couple of times for other sort of 2-part episodes. But for its length, I think it's a fine story that really hits on so many key noir points. Alright, well now to listener comments and feedback. And we start out with the squared circle matter. And Julie writes, another stellar episode by Bob Bailey, where we get to see Johnny's compassion for this boxer. Thank you, Adam, for the joy you bring to each day with these episodes. Thanks so much, Julie. And then Green Archer Comics comments, you rightfully called out how coincidental it was that the boxer and his manager were not only staying in the same hotel, but on the same floor. But thinking about it, I think the same thing happened multiple times on the Roger Moore the Saint TV series and other detective shows. I feel like it is a bit of a trope. Well, that's a good observation, and I would tend to let it go in situations like that, because the Saint is a guy who travels in style. He stays at the best hotels. And so do the villains he faces off against. So I can totally buy the Saint and his villains have the same taste in hotels. The reason it stood out to me with Johnny is that the boxer was hard up for cash, and his manager was, and Johnny was on expense account. So the odds of them staying at the same hotel just doesn't seem to make sense. I know it's kind of a fringe objection, but it's what I'm going with. Now, of course, if I were a detective and I were up against foes, we traveled and they were the same economic status, you'd stay in the most kind of like cheapest hotel in town where everybody tended to wear a shirt still. And we'd bump into each other at the continental breakfast. I might say we'd have donuts but they would probably grab a second donut in line and leave nothing behind for me, because obviously they're evil. But at any rate, I digress. Julie responds by raising another point. My question was, why didn't Johnny move the conversation to his room instead of waiting for the bad guys to come back? Also, thank you, Green Archer Comics, for the Johnny Dollar comic. There, of course, is no good answer to why not. Why not? You gotta give the villains a chance to have their fun. But realistically, no, I think Julie's absolutely right that, particularly after the manager walked in on Johnny in the dressing room in Joplin and knocked him out, it seems like the second time around, we'd be like, let's go ahead and move this conversation back to my room. And then we also have some comments on the Rasmussen matter. We start actually on Spotify, where Plunker writes, I've listened to this episode 3 or 4 times, and never without tears. Absolutely my favorite. Definitely a powerful episode. Robert says very good, brings back fond memories from the past. And then we also have some comments on YouTube. Jeffrey writes, this was one of my favorite episodes. Heartwarming, people can change and be loved. And then we have an email from Lauren, who writes, Dear Adam, regarding the Rasmussen matter, I particularly love John Abbott's comments at the end of this show's note in his book, The Who is Johnny Dollar Matter. And yes, I bought them both after listening to you mention their usefulness, and I'm really enjoying them, either as supplemental reads following your podcast or as a standalone, flip it open randomly to read a snippet. Continuing, he writes, this is probably one of, if not the most touching and heart-wrenching of all the Johnny Dollar stories. One would find difficulty finding fault with the statement. This is possibly due to a number of factors within the storyline itself. Of particular interest to me is how we are shown a side of Johnny that rarely pops up, where he would actually like to keep the discovery of Laura a secret from Mr. Rasmussen, even though he has an ethical obligation to finish the job. Touching indeed. At the heart of this story, I believe we find all the characters, including Johnny, searching for something deeper than simply day-to-day living or occupation. Possibly this is why we resonate with it so much. Also of note is how this high level of listener emotion can be drawn from a short standalone matter where there were not 5 consecutive days, as is the serials, in which to build the characters up and draw ties to them individually. And lastly, I have to ask your opinion about the last 2 items on his expense account. Expense account, item 14, $40 miscellaneous, and item 15, $35 stenography. Should it be obvious to the listeners what these were for? Curious to know more. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your thoughtful comments. Regarding the miscellaneous, I take that to be the sort of little incidental expenses that you'd accrue that would be eligible for expense account reimbursement. Like, I don't know, parking fees at various places where Johnny needed to drive a rental car for some reason. All these just sort of little daily expenses that he'd rack up on a case, which are not particularly interesting for the audience. We don't particularly care if he paid 35 cents for a shoe shine. And including that item, that sort of thing would undermine the whole idea of an action-packed expense account. I also guess in terms of real life that an insurance company hiring a senior investigator who is, quite trusted, they're not going to want to have necessarily every nickel and dime that's part of his expense account. Not this particular company. For their bookkeeping purposes and for simplicity, this particular company may just say, okay, you can, put a reasonable amount for miscellaneous and we'll just be okay with that. For stenography, I couldn't even guess what he would need stenography services for. His job was to find the beneficiary and deliver the check. He hands her a check, she signs for it, and I couldn't tell you where a stenographer would come into this picture. Maybe someone could enlighten me, but Lauren, that's a great question, and I just don't know. Well, now it's time to thank our Patreon supporter of the day, and I want to go ahead and thank Lisa. Lisa has been one of our Patreon supporters since May of 2021, currently supporting the podcast at the Shamus level of $4 or more per month. Thank you so much for your support, Lisa. And that will do it for today. If you're enjoying the podcast, please follow us using your favorite podcast software. And be sure to rate and review the podcast wherever you download it from. We will be back next Friday with another episode of yours truly, Johnny Dollar. But join us back here tomorrow for Dragnet, where
I'd say stronger laws. That's the answer.
No, I don't think it is, Mr. Scott. Passing a set of new laws isn't going to make this city a cleaner or a safer place for your boys to grow up in. Laws don't decide how moral a city's going to be. People do. Laws don't mold character in young boys either. The parents and teachers do that.
I don't think I know what you're getting at. What do you mean?
Well, just this, Mr. Scott. It's our job on the police department to keep filthy junk like these books from falling into youngsters' hands.
Yes?
Now, on the other side of the fence, the youngster has to be taught to recognize this obscene material for what it is. Filth and garbage. And the youngsters have to be taught that in the home, in the school, and the church. Now, if they can be made to understand that the kind of dirt and filth that these books represent, well, that'd be worth more than any new set of laws, wouldn't it?
But what about these men who put out the books? The men who sell them? How do you reach them?
Through the youngsters. They seem to know the way.
I hope you'll be with us then. In the meantime, send your comments to box13 at greatdetectives.net. Follow us on Twitter at Radio Detectives and check us out on Instagram, instagram.com/greatdetectives. From Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham, signing off.